Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Essential Series. I'm Mari Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Advancing Wellness. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this expert interview where we explore topics that impact employee well-being. My guest today is Naomi Abrams. Naomi is an internationally sought-after speaker, author, and injury prevention consultant who focuses on helping companies get the most out of their employees through programs with strong ROI and strong internal longevity. She has helped corporations around the globe reduce workplace injuries by an average of 75%, resulting in a 1 in 8 return on investment. Her easy-to-follow, nonsense style is meant to give management and owners the tools they need to succeed and the rationale to prove their purpose. As an occupational therapist who specializes in treating injured employees under workers' compensation, she saw all the things that employers did incorrectly to keep employees at work, keep employees safe, and deal with them once injured. As a therapist, Naomi demanded the most from her patients to keep them moving in the right direction. As a consultant, she demands no less from her clients. Naomi, welcome. I'm so excited to have you join me today.
Thanks for having me, Marie. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, many people are suddenly working from home and not in their normal workplaces. And we know that employers spend a lot of time and money designing workplaces to look after employee well-being and safety. And yet suddenly, there are those employees sitting on their couch and sitting at their dining room tables. So now that so many people are working at home, what is the impact from a health and safety perspective?
I think there's a couple of things happening here. One is that no, people have not set up their home offices. It's funny. It's like people would go home and play on their computers and they would always have their computers at home. But now everything is focusing in and saying, okay, I have to work all the time at this computer that I'm at my desk. So not at my desk. I'm on my couch. I'm on my bed. And then my kids also are using the computer. So we've got a lot of back, neck, shoulder pains and strains happening these days. And it's all being exacerbated by just the general stress of COVID-19. It's all being piled on. And then really, when you add the workplace requirements, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? With the kids yelling in the background and the dog yelling in the background, everyone is just, it's all coming up and in and into the shoulders, into the back, into the neck. And really, it's going to come back and get us later, I think.
So clearly it's not an ideal scenario since we had literally launched into this with very little preparation. When you're working within a client and they're moving employees to a home-based work situation, how do they think about designing that space for the employee at home in the same way that they would have designed this space in the workplace?
Well, unfortunately, they don't think it through very far. Even the companies that decided to go to telework before COVID hit, they really started looking at the real estate benefits and saying, oh, okay, well, I can reduce the size of my office. Or they looked at just the amount of travel their employees had and said, hey, I can get people off the roads. This is so great. They'll work from home. Unfortunately, people didn't really think ahead. All they said is, hey, we'll get a laptop. We'll give them the laptops and they can go work from home. So some companies looked ahead and said, well, then we better give them a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor. Some companies said, hey, let's give them a one sheet that says how to set up your office. But unfortunately, even companies that started to do it before COVID really didn't think it through very well. And they need to, especially since I think really when COVID moves on, however that happens, telework is not going to go away. It really was the trend even prior to COVID. So companies really have to stop and think, how much responsibility are they going to take for a home workstation, since they're still responsible for those employees? And it's going to be a very interesting balance because they also can't say, hey, employee, we know this is your private residence, but we're going to insist that you set it up our way. There's that balance that has to happen. And the employees and employers are going to have to come to some sort of agreement. Really, the employee has to take some responsibility. It's their home. It's their place. And so to some extent, I think employers have a stumbling block in front of them in a sense of the employees have to welcome them in to say, hey, we want this set up correctly, and we're willing to do what you want us to do. But laptops were never meant to be used on the lap. Laptops were never meant to be used as primary computer devices. They're just not designed correctly. They're designed so you have to hunch into them. And so it will be interesting to see where it goes. If we start getting better laptops, do we get devices that pop in half and raise up on their own, and projectable keyboards and things like that? That should be interesting, but we're not there yet.
No, we're certainly not. So what's the advice that you would give to employers when we're talking about the elements of well-being and health and safety that they should consider when they're either planning for this next phase of working from home? We have parents whose children aren't going to go back to school till who knows when. So it's not like this is going to end on some arbitrary date in the spring. So what would you suggest that employers do and take responsibility for creating the best work environment, the physical work environment for their people at home?
I think first and foremost, acknowledge that laptops are just portable CPUs. It's not as simple as just handing that out. So they're going to have to take a step back and say, what other equipment are we going to ship over? Are we going to give everyone a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse, which really is what's necessary to set up a good seated at a desk workstation or standing at a desk workstation? You need something that separates the monitor and the keyboard. So that's first and foremost. The second is education. Really, employers cannot rely on the internet to be providing proper education to their employees. It's just not. It's like, here, have a whole bunch of information, and then they wonder why it is employees start saying, well, I need this, and I need this, and I need this. They really have to take control of the education and put out the information their employees need for how their employees work. Do their employees spend a lot of time on the phone? They spend a lot of time on virtual conferences? Do they need some sort of other microphone, other camera that's going to make life a little easier? Really, they have to do a technological evaluation to understand what kind of education is necessary. And then they have to actually ask the employees to take care of themselves. It's interesting to me that employers will often push information out or just expect them to find information, but at no point do they say, hey, we really want you to take care of yourself, and we're going to do the best we can to support that. And I think in environments where people are working by themselves in their homes or with their families there, the employers really have to make that request and say it's important to them, it's important to the employer that we create some sort of partnership here to ensure that everyone stays healthy. And
well, let's talk about that a little bit in a little bit more detail then. What is the role that the individual employee has in all of this?
Well, I think the individual employee needs to request help. Many companies already have in place experts or information that allow the employee to get the information and the expertise and the help that they need. But many times the employees say, well, this is my home, so I guess this is just the way it's supposed to be. Or I have so much stress, maybe that's why everything hurts so much. And a lot of employers already have in place even just stress management assistance, or in the wellness world, they've got nutritionists you can talk to. They've got psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers you can talk to. But it's amazing to me how when the employee leaves the workplace, they divorce themselves from some of those pieces of assistance. Right. So I think from the employee standpoint, you have to acknowledge that you have to take care of yourself. And it doesn't have to be combative. It doesn't have to be adversarial in any way, shape, or form. It's just, hey, I really would like to take care of myself. What resources are still available to me now that I'm working from home? And a lot of those resources, as you know, even in a wellness program, they're available. It's just you have to ask for them. So I think also employees have to acknowledge that they're just as important as their families when they're working at the computer. So yes, their kids have to work on the computer, especially as you said, who knows when school is coming back?
Right.
Who knows? I mean, you could be in, the West Coast, the East Coast, wherever, and who knows where that's going to happen. So there has to be an acknowledgement that my kid has to be safe when they're at the computer. I have to be safe when I'm at the computer. So I have to actually take the time to set things up for myself.
And what about the challenges that some people face in that they just don't live in a place where they have room to even work? How do we support those individuals?
Well, really, I mean, you and I both travel. We know that sometimes you end up in a hotel room or somewhere that you just don't have a great setup.
Yeah.
The thing is that you can always have a good setup. Whether you can have a great setup is questionable. But even when I go and work in hotels, the chairs, the desks, they're not built for me. I'm 5 foot tall. Come on. I mean, I can barely reach the floor. But there are ways of setting yourself up, but you have to take that 5 minutes to actually problem solve how to do that. So if they have a couch and they're working on the couch, they can set themselves up properly on the couch using pillows, using 3-ring binders to lift the laptop up. I mean, let's say you're living in a studio or something where there just isn't a place to set up a table. Well, then work on your couch, but put support behind your back so you're not sitting like a turtle, and put some pillows on your lap so you're not leaning down and trying to see that screen. Or even better, these days we all have like TVs that seem to do everything, including showing us television, cast to the television so that you can sit up and work on the laptop and be looking straight ahead. So there's so many things out there, but you have to take a moment to do it. Unfortunately, we have a tendency to just grab our devices and just start working away at them, when in reality, you have to just sort of stop and say, nope, I know myself. I know I'm not going to be here for just 2 minutes. I'm actually probably going to be here for an hour. So let me take a moment and set myself up. The main thing to know is don't be a turtle. If at all possible, set yourself up so you're not a turtle. Just put something behind your back so you're sitting upright. Bring up to you. The world comes to you. You don't go to the world. It's the best way to understand how to set yourself up properly.
That's a great suggestion. I can remember I've been working from home for, I don't know, probably 20 years. And when I got some first long-term assignments where I knew I was going to be working from home, the first thing I did was I bought a very expensive chair. And even by today's standards, it's still a very expensive chair. But I just knew that if I was going to be sitting here for long periods of time, and then since then I've added, a lumbar support and, other things that I needed to be able to be really comfortable. So great suggestions.
See, Marie, you bring that interesting thing up, because that's one of the questions I get a lot. Now that I'm working from home, what chair should I buy? Well, interestingly enough, the one way I know the chair is a good one is you shouldn't need to add a lumbar cushion to it. So you bought a really expensive chair, and don't get me wrong, I get that question all the time. Really, the best chair should be one that fits you and supports you without anything getting added to it, because you spent a lot of money on it. You should make sure it fits you, right? So really, I think one of the biggest things that I worry about with COVID, and I know this sounds totally weird, when I'm sending someone to buy a chair, I'd like them to sit in it first.
Well, of course. Yeah.
And how do you do that when the stores are closed?
Yeah.
Because it has to fit you. It has to actually work for you. So everyone asks me, what's the best chair out there? It's the one that fits you. It's the one that works. So that is actually something people have been asking a lot when they do take responsibility. Then they say, well, then I better go out and get a chair. And it's like, yes, you should, but I can't tell you which one to get because you can't go sit in them anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's really a catch-22. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So as we start to look beyond the COVID pandemic, and is there a balance between managing risk and having some of your workforce continuing to work from home? How do employers think about that risk management versus the reality of the world we're living in now?
I think there's definitely a way for them to manage that risk. They still have to pay attention to their employees, the back pains, the neck pains, things like that. those still can be considered workers' compensation, so that they have to pay attention. But at the same time, if they are taking control of the education and actually providing correct education, if they're considering how they might help, whether that's from saying, all right, we're going to send everyone on monitor, or say, okay, everyone gets a footrest, or say you can request these 3 things, a keyboard, a mouse, and a monitor from us if you need them. They have to really take a look at their own budgeting, their own way of managing employees, and say, okay, I'm going to control not only my risk, but what it is I'm putting out there. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, they have to ask their employees to be responsible. And part of that includes the education. It includes acknowledging the education. So part of the way that risk is averted is to say, we've given you this knowledge, we've given you access to this expertise, acknowledge that, please. Because at least then as an employer, I'm taking time to say, I'm giving you this, have you received it? And if the employee does not say, yes, I've received it, that's a risk. So I think that the employer really has to think ahead and say, how am I going to set up the structure so that I know that my employee has taken the time to take care of themselves? How do I assess that, and how do I ensure that? And once I've done that, I've done the best I can. Then they have to take a look at their work practices. Because if they're going to have meetings, for example, I was thinking about this morning when we were preparing to go on here. If they're going to have meetings online that are going to take 3 hours, and they're going to assess whether the person is participating by whether they can see their face in the camera, well, 3 hours is a long time to be sitting. And if your camera only sees you if you're sitting here, then they're saying then 3 hours you have to sit here. And that's not a healthy thing. You have to get up and move at least every half hour, 45 minutes. So what is that camera dictating to us now? And they have to take a look and say, all right, you know what? We're going to say after every half hour, we're going to take a 1-minute break. And that's just now going to become a policy for online meetings. We're trying to take care of you. It's up to you if you decide not to stand up. It's up to you to decide if you decide not to stretch or whatnot. But we're going to set up our own policies to ensure that we're taking care of our employees. That's the best way that they can ensure their own risk.
Good suggestions, both to look after the employee, but also for the employee to take some responsibility for that as well. Great suggestions.
Yeah.
If our audience wants to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, Naomi, where can they find you?
They can find me at www.workinjuryfree.com.
Right.
It's a good way to reach us. We have a contact form on there. We've got some resources for people. My books are on there. If you want to know how to set up your own office, you can always get my book, Why is My Office a Pain in My Blank? And it works for home offices too.
That's great. Such wonderful resources. Well, thank you for sharing all that and for being here for this discussion today. As always, it's great to spend time with you, Naomi.
It's great to talk to you.
Thanks.